Our fourth example was on entering text in cells, and I provided you with a lot of information about how you could enter text in your cell or the formula bar. We also pointed out how you could manually resize the cell to fit the text by widening the cell or by wrapping the text, and that feature is found on the Home tab in Alignment. And finally, you can format your cells by clicking on Format. That's found in Home tab and Cells. As I pointed out before, about 80% of the things that you're going to be doing in Excel are going to be found on that Home tab. Now we're on example 4 in our workbook, and this is titled Text in Cells. And I've given you a cheat sheet of sorts, and keep in mind that if you click on it and you bring up the margins for it, you can move it around anywhere on this worksheet so that you can work with it. You can also make a copy of it. I mentioned this before, but it always bears repeating. The columns go up and down on your worksheet and they're alphabetical. The rows go across your worksheet and they're numerical. You should be using the columns for your headings. You should be using the rows for your individual pieces of information. And an example of a worksheet that everyone has seen who does genealogy is the enumeration for the census. So those population schedules have information that is in each of the columns, and then and those are your headings, and then the information that is in each of the rows is the individual information. So that's a good way to remember it. Now, as I mentioned before, the cells are the individual containers of data, and they're named by their column and row. So right now I'm in A4. We can see that because there's a heavier block around that cell, but also highlighted is A and 4, and then in the name box I also see A4. I can enter information here. I can also enter information in the formula bar. Now, as you can see, that information in A4 spills over into B4, and at this point it's not difficult because we can continue to see it. However, if I were to type something in cell B4, I no longer see all of my information that was in A4. I can see it in the formula bar, but I can't see it in this cell. And that's because I'm going to need to either extend the width of my column, or I'm going to need to wrap that text. So those are the two ways you can approach making sure you can see all of that information. Now, I also wanted to point out that if you're working in your worksheet and you wanted to get back to cell A1, you can scroll through your worksheet. But if you have a lot of information, that might not be the most efficient way to do it. So right now we are in G39, and on the keyboard, I press Control Home. That takes me back to A1, and I can tell that because the name box tells me I'm in A1. If I wanted to go to the end of my worksheet, and that's the active information I've placed in the worksheet, I can press Control End, and it takes me to the last time I entered information in a cell. So those are a couple quick ways of moving around. The other thing to keep in mind, and if I were you, I'd just type your name here in a cell, pick any cell you want to, go ahead and make it a little larger if your name extends a bit as mine does. So having entered your name in any cell, you can go ahead and work with the arrow keys. You can arrow left, you can arrow right, you can arrow up, you can arrow down, and this moves you around quickly in your cells. Now let's take a look at copy and paste. I have information entered in cell A24. I can right-click, and Excel gives me what it considers are the most useful features that I might want to use when I'm working with data in that cell. If I want to work with the font, I can work with it here. If I want to copy, I can click on that, and I get these marching ants. And say I want to put it in E20. I can right-click again and paste it. Once I've copied the information and those ants are marching, I can also paste it anywhere else that I want to. And I'm doing this with the mouse feature. I could also take this information and press Control V, go anywhere I want and add that information. So go ahead and play with that a little bit so you can see how the Control C for copy, Control V for paste works, but also see how you can do that with your mouse. And if you ever want to get rid of those marching ants, you simply click on Escape, and that's on your keyboard in the upper left-hand column. Now let's take a quick look at data. This data here is entered in the general format, and I'm taking a look at the number here, and I'm opening this up so that I can see everything. Now I'm entering it general, and what it tells me is that the general format cells have no specific number format. Keep in mind Excel is a numbers program that we're using to do something more with. If I wanted that information to be text, so that no matter what happens, if there's a number in this cell or not, the cell displays exactly as you've entered the information. It doesn't make any changes to it. Now, if we had special information like a zip code or a phone number, a social security number, we'd come down here and choose special to enter that information, and it would monitor that code for us. So there's a number of different ways of entering your data. Oftentimes you'll be using general, sometimes you'll be using date, and it gives you choices, but you need to keep in mind that even if you use this choice, as long as that information remains in one cell, you're fine. But if you want to sort it or you want to put it into 3 different cells, it's going to work with a formula. For the most part, you can use general or text. Now keep in mind that you might have currency information, which could be currency or accounting, and you're going to have some numbers that you use. So check out and see how those all work. If you have opened the drop-down menu here, you can also, when you're formatting your cells here, work with alignment, work with your font, work with the border, work with your fill, and protect those cells. So in this instance, and you can see it, I've entered this date as text. Now as you can see, this information in A27 is entered as general, and I've entered this information as text, so Excel will make no effort to change that information. If I wanted all of the information to be text rather than general, I could select the column by left-clicking and select text. All right, let's take a quick look at the fact that Excel is very helpful and anticipates information for us. I have January, February, and March listed in these 3 cells. If I hover over the bottom right-hand corner of this cell and move through the cell, and that's by clicking on the information, by left-clicking and holding that, and then I release it, Excel knows what I wanted to do by reading January, February, and March, and it added April, May, and June in the columns. It will also do that in the rows. So if you use a specialized numbering system for anything that you have, you can take that first number, come down to the far right-hand bottom corner, left-click and hold, and scroll through as much as you want, release it, and Excel has added those numbers for you. So it's done a fill series of 001 through 020. You could also copy those cells. It would give you the number 1 in each instance. So depending on what you're doing, this method of copying and filling cells is very useful. So those are just a few basics on entering text in cells.